So today we're going to continue our lesson from yesterday. I've asked you to copy some key concepts here, the steps on solving an equation by completing the square. So the first step, you want to rewrite your equation in the form of x squared plus bx equals c. So you see you get all the x terms on one side and all the constants on the other. The next step, divide all the terms of the equation by the coefficient of x squared if it is not 1. So if you have a 2x squared to begin with, then you're going to divide everything by a 2. Number 2, complete the square by adding b divided by 2 squared to each side of your equation. So that's what we did yesterday. At the very end, we completed the square by dividing the b term by 2 and squaring it. So you're going to square the term on each, add that to each side of your equation, over here and over there. Okay. The third step is to factor your trinomial, then find your square roots for step 4, and step 5 is just to solve for x. So let's look at this worked out. We'll go back to your homework in just a minute. So let's look at problem 5. Yesterday we covered 1, 2, and 3. So today we're going to continue with completing the square. Now we're going to solve with completing the square. Where we left off yesterday in your homework, let me back up one. If I can find it. So this is where we left off yesterday. And we were just trying to figure out, how do we complete this square? And here's your answers, by the way, so go ahead and check these. If you work the evens or the odds, you should have worked one or the other. And check what you have. So let's look at these. So I'm backing up to completing the square. How do you complete the square? So when they give you an x squared and x term without the c term, how can you do that? Get a perfect square trinomial. Well, you look at your b term, and we said that the c term is equal to the b term divided by 2 squared. So let's do that. My b coefficient is 8. So 8 divided by 2 squared. So it's going to be 4 squared, which is 16. So that's how you complete the square. So you're going to write 16 here, and because you have that, you could actually rewrite your trinomial as a perfect square of x plus 4 squared. And that's where we're headed to today. I'm going to pause the video. There's a knock at the door. All right. So let's look at 17. Our b term is 20x. So we're going to take the coefficient 20 divided by 2. So that's going to be 10. And square it. And that's going to be equal to 100. Someone told me on their workbook this morning that there was a typo there. So make sure that says 20 divided by 2, not 10 divided by 2. All right, on number 18, we've got a 14, and notice that there's a negative here. So let me show you why I don't really pay attention to the negatives on this. If you take negative 14 divided by 2, we get negative 7. Well, what's negative 7 squared? A positive 49. So because we're squaring this number at the end, you don't have to pay attention to the sign to do this. Okay. So 7 squared is 49. The next one, we've got 24 divided by 12. Divided by 2 is 12, and 12 squared is 144. 34 divided by 2 is 17. 17 squared is 289. And 46 divided by 2 is 23. 23 squared is 529. Now, if you were to rewrite all of these as a perfect square binomial, so you would go x plus 10 squared and this one would be x minus 7 squared. Everybody see that? And this one would be x minus 12 squared. This one would be x plus 17 squared. And this one would be x minus 23 squared. So in all of these, it's really just b divided by 2 right there. Right? Does everybody see that? So today you're going to have to take the extra step to where you rewrite it as a squared binomial. Any questions about this homework? Okay, let me pause real quick while we're on this, and let's look at your, let's grade your first part of your homework yesterday. Then we'll come back. Okay, so we're going to pick up with problem 5 today. It says, what is the solution of 3x squared minus 12x plus 6 equals 0? That's the wrong one. There it is. Okay, so I've taken the liberty to copy and shrink down our little steps. I'm going to call that our recipe card for solving our equation for completing the square. So let's work this problem using these steps. Number 1 says rewrite the equation in the form of x squared plus bx equals c. To do this, get all the terms with the variable on one side of the equation, so these go on one side of the equal sign, and the others, the constants, go on the other side of the equal sign. So this guy needs to go over there, right? So what do we need to do? Let's start by writing the original equation. And now I know this guy has to go. So let's subtract 6 from each side. So we're left with 3x squared minus 12x equal negative 6. Okay? Is everybody with me? So we've got all the terms with the variable on one side of our equal sign and the constants on the other. So we've satisfied the first part of step 1. Now it says divide all of the terms of the equation by the coefficient of x squared if it is not 1. So is my coefficient of x squared 1? No. So we need to divide everything by that number, 3, 3, 3. All right? Now let's simplify. So we get an x squared minus 4x equal negative 2. Everybody with me? So now we've done the first step, step 1. Now step 2 says complete the square by adding b divided by 2 squared to each side of the equation. So let's complete our square. B divided by 2 squared. So that's going to be 4, because this is our a is 1 now, b is 4, and well, we don't have our c over there right now. Okay? So b divided by 2, so it's going to be 4 divided by 2 squared. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So we're going to add 4 to each side. Okay, equal negative 2 plus 4. So the plus 4 and the plus 4 is what we added. That came from 4 divided by 2 squared. That's what goes there. Okay? Any questions so far? Is everybody with me at this step?
So just checking, you pretty much ignore the sign, whether it's positive or negative when you do that, b divided by 2 squared.
Okay, if it bothers you about the sign, just go ahead and keep it. So if you want to say that b is equal to negative 4, which is really true. So let's see what happens. If I take b divided by 2 squared, I'm going to get negative 4 divided by 2 is a negative 2 squared. And what is negative 2 squared? Negative 2 times negative 2 comes out to a positive 4. So whether it's a positive or a negative, I just don't deal with it because in the end, it's going to drop when you square it. So is it there? Yes. So I just leave it off because I know in the end, because I'm squaring, it's going to be a positive. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to use your negative sign in that or not. If it makes more sense to you to leave it in your equations, go ahead and use it. Okay, any questions there? Okay, let me erase this. All right, now back to our equation. We just completed the square by adding 4 to each side. All right, now step 3 is to factor the trinomial. Okay, so we know that's a perfect square trinomial because we just completed the square. That's why we complete the square. So we can write this as x minus 2 squared. Everybody with me there? Equals, and now we're going to have a negative 2 plus a 4 is going to be a positive 2. And let me reiterate, all we're doing here is solving for x. And we've completed the square so we can get down to 1x that we can solve with. So see, by completing the square and rewriting it as this, now we can clear our square by taking the square root of each side. And now we have a single x term, and that's all we needed to begin with to solve this equation. So when you take the square root of each side, we get x minus 2 equal positive negative radical 2. And now we just have to solve for x. So add 2 to each side, and you get x equal 2 plus or minus radical 2. And so that is our answer. So it would have been x equals 2 plus radical 2 and 2 minus radical 2. Two different answers. And actually, those points are where this parabola is going to cross the x-axis, wherever those fall. All right? Any questions? All right. So that's how you solve an equation by completing the square. All we're trying to do is find the value of x. And because we had an x squared and an x, and we can't use the magic x to say what 2 factors of 6 add up to be negative 12, well, that doesn't work. You've got to find another way to solve and find out what is my x value. What is x going to equal? So we do that by putting that over there and then use these two, complete the square, rewrite it as a binomial squared, taking the square root of each side, and then we end up, after we solve it, with x equal positive and negative of something. So that's how we solve, and that's why we use completing the square. Are there any questions? Okay, get your whiteboards, and I want you to work this problem on your whiteboards. Okay, and I still have the little rules up there. Let's see if I can make them bigger. All right, there you go. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. And I'm going to pause the video now. Okay, so whoops. Watch with me while I walk through this on the board. If I can find it again. There we go. All right, so our first step is to do what? Get all the variables on one side and the constants on the other. So let's get this x over there, and let's get this 3 over here. When you do that, we get a negative 2x. That goes to 0. Carry that straight down. Equals, that goes to 0. And this goes to 6. So now our second step of the second part of the first step was to divide by your coefficient if it's not 1. So divide everything by 2. And they cancel out. So we get x squared minus x equal 3. All right, so now we've got to complete the square. So that's like a -1. So we're going to say that c is b divided by 2 squared. So -1 divided by 2 is -1/2 squared. That's going to be a positive 1/4. So we're going to add a positive 1/4 to each side. But I'm going to leave this written in terms of square. So we said it was 1/2 squared. All right, and then plus. I'll just do the same over here. Okay, everybody with me there? Instead of taking it to 1/4, I kept it as 1/2 squared, or -1/2 squared if you want to be 100% correct there. All right. So now we're going to rewrite this in terms of a perfect square. So what's it going to be? X minus 1/2 squared equal, and now this is going to be 3 plus 1/2. -1/2 squared is a positive 1/4. So 3 1/4, or 3.25. That's a quarter. 3 1/4 is 3.25. And actually I'm going to rewrite 1/2 as 0.5. Okay. Now that I have that, I can take the square root of each side. I'm going sideways here. So it's going to be, these cancel out, and I get x minus 0.5 equals positive negative radical 3.25. Okay, now I'm going to add a half to each side. And then we get our answer. X is equal to 1/2 plus radical 3.25, and x is equal to 1/2 minus radical 3.25, and that's your answer. Any questions on that? Okay, so this is 2 problems now for your homework, and you've got these examples and you'll have the recording to go back on. Okay, so now let's move forward and see how else can we use this. Now they're asking us to write this in vertex form. You can complete a square to change a quadratic function to vertex form. So I wrote the vertex form up here, y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Now we've come full circle with our chapter, because we started off with the vertex form and doing translations, and now we're coming right back to it using everything we've learned about factoring and completing the square. So now we're sort of combining all these lessons into one. Okay, so this is how we're going to use it. What is y equals x squared plus 4x minus 6 in vertex form? Name the vertex and the y-intercept. So we can name the y-intercept right now, couldn't we? What is it?
It's -6.
-6, right there. That's your y-intercept. So that's our y value, though, right? It's up here on or down here on -6. So that means that x must be 0, right? So we can already say that our y-intercept is 0, -6. But we still have to find our vertex. So we have to take this equation, finagle it around, and get it in the form of the vertex form. And then we can pluck out our h value and our k value and tell them the vertex. So do we have an a value now in our equation? What is a?
A is
1, correct, because it's not written, but it's understood that our a value is 1. So that we've got licked. Now we sort of have our plus k right there, but how can we turn this into a binomial squared? What could we do to turn this x squared plus 4x into a binomial squared? We can complete the square. Yay! Okay, but what we're going to do now, because we're keeping this in the vertex form, we're going to keep all of our work over on the right-hand side of the equation. All right, so let's start by writing the original equation, y equals x squared plus 4x minus 6. And now we've got to complete the square. But what we're going to do is we're going to shove this 6 over to the side, because we're going to keep it y equals. We're not moving anything over here. We're going to keep it y equals. So we're going to move our negative 6 over here. Then we're going to complete the square here. And then we're going to take it away right there. So we're going to add a number and take away that same number. Okay? And it's the same, truly, if you look at it, it's the same as solving it on both sides. So let me walk you through this so you can see what I'm talking about. So I said let's move the negative 6 over here, and now let's complete this square. So we're going to take x squared plus 4x, and what do I need to complete my square? 4 divided by 2 squared is going to be, what's 4 divided by 2? 2, and what's 2 squared?
4.
So I'm going to add a 4 here. Now I can complete my square. Actually, if we want to make it super simple, we can keep it as 2 squared. All right, and then we've got our minus 6 over here. So if I've just added 2 squared, you know, the normal thing to do would have been to add a 2 squared to that side, right? But I told you we're keeping everything on the right-hand side. So how could we account for that? How would we move it back over here? Subtract it. So basically all we're doing is we're going to add the number, and then we're going to come over here and just take it away also. So what have I added to this side of the equation? 0, because I got a plus 2 squared, and then I have a minus 2 squared. So basically I just added 0 to this equation, but I made 0 fit our needs to complete the square. All right, so now let's rewrite this, and this will start making sense when you see what we do with it here. So there it is. Now we're going to rewrite our trinomial here as a binomial squared, x plus 2 squared. And now we're just doing a straight copy of that down. Now do the math on the negative 6 minus 2 squared. That comes out to negative 10. And if you realize at this point we're in our vertex form. So we've done all of our work, almost. Now we just have to pick out our vertex. And what's our vertex going to be? Remember, it's x minus h plus k. X minus h squared plus k. So my h must be a what? Negative 2. And my k is a? Negative 10. So now we've got our vertex and our y-intercept, which we got at the beginning. And that's how you do these. Now it's just to check with the graphing calculator, and my plans were to pass those out and work with the graphing calculator. But because we passed back papers and other classes had a lot of questions about the homework, I just didn't do that today. What we'll do is get the calculators out on Monday and learn how to use them. Here, how many of you will be gone tomorrow with the parade? So quite a few of my students, about a quarter of them, will be gone tomorrow. So make sure you watch the videos tomorrow to stay up with the homework. Question?
What will you be doing tomorrow?
The next lesson.
Oh, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So now to check with the graphing calculator, and that's why I'm waiting till Monday, because I'll have somebody gone tomorrow. To check with your graphing calculator, I'm going to go ahead and show you quickly what you would do. So we would turn it on. Oh boy, let's see if I can get this down there. There we go. Clear it. And when you enter an equation, y equals something, you're just going to go straight there to that button that says y equals right here. And actually I've already typed it in, but I'm going to clear it out. Okay, so you type in x squared. So to do an x, you go to this button right here by your alpha button, click the one that has an x at the beginning. And then to square any number, you hit the x squared key. So there's your x squared plus 4, and hit your x again, x minus 6, and enter. Now to see the graph of that, you just hit your graph button, and boom, there it goes. And you can count out your vertex. Okay? You have a way of turning on your labels and seeing certain things, or do a trace button and see where it lies. But the book wanted you to go to your tables. So to go to tables, you go to your second function. When you hit the second function, the yellow key, it makes all the buttons associate with the yellow print. And you look at your y values. And actually you're putting up, so I'm going to stop here because I have one more problem to show you. Oh, actually, no more problems. Your homework tonight is 22 through 30 evens. Now I'm going to go back and finish the calculator till the bell rings, okay? All right, so on this, if you arrow up, you can, what we're looking for in our y values, we know when we've got a parabola and it's upwards facing, as this one should be because our a value was positive, our value is going to start going, y values start going down, 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 then it's going to hit the lowest y point and then go back up. So you're looking for that in this y column. You're looking for where did the values go down, stop, and start going back up. And when you see I've got 6, -1, -6, -9, -10, and then it goes back up, -9, -6. So that lowest point right there proves that -10 is the y value of our vertex. And if you go across, what's the x value when y is -10? It's -2. So that's another way to check your work. Okay? So that's how you get your vertex. And this is why I said you really have to know and understand what these things are that you're looking for. You have to understand how to work the problem before you can go to the graphing calculator. Because if you don't know the basics, you're not even going to know what to look for on your calculator. So that concludes our lesson today. We'll work with these in the calculator next Monday. Tomorrow we'll move on to the next lesson, which is using the quadratic equation, which is, we'll sing the song tomorrow. Everybody. Okay, so work your homework tonight. We'll turn all this in tomorrow. Thank you very much, and that concludes our lesson.